This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
Leber.
Nacho Leber. Ben Leber at Nacho Leber via the tweet machine. Watch him on television today, Twin Cities Live from 3 to 4:30 on Channel 5. And welcome back to 9 to noon. It's 10:07. A couple are here with Nacho. Up to Courtney Cronin, ESPN, ESPN.com. She covers the Chicago Bears for the mothership. She'll be joining at about 10:45. And let's begin there. We discussed it a little bit last week, but the Bears at 10. The Chicago Bears have picks 10, 39, 41, and 72. With 39 and 41, you can do something with that. You can get back into the first round.
For sure.
There's a lot you can do when you have 39 and 41 that close together. Keep one, trade the other, or whatever. But when it comes to their approach at 10, we've discussed offensive line for them, running back. It's the closer we get to it, the more I've just talked myself into what Ben Johnson, their new coach, was able to do with Sam Laporta. And one of those tight ends, the Penn State guy or the Michigan guy, it's when they took Jahmyr Gibbs, they were lambasted early from the outside, being like, whoa, man, nobody had him close to 10th, whatever. Ben's like, I don't care. Watch me now.
Yep.
So for them to do that and take somebody where nobody thinks they're going to go, could be a tight end, who knows? That wouldn't surprise me. What do you think about those Bears at 10?
Well, a lot of rumors are they're going to try to go up and get Ashton Genty and all this other stuff. I mean, they are going to be aggressive and they want that type of runner. Just like you said, Ben Johnson just kind of wants to rebuild a little bit of what they did in Detroit, and you can't fault him for that. I definitely think that they're going to be leaning offensively. You got an offensive-minded head coach in his first draft. I think they'll let him sort of take the reins on this one. If it's Tyler Warren or if it's Colston Loveland, which I think is a little bit of a stretch at number 10 to take Colston, I could see Tyler Warren being a guy that they take. I mean, why not go 12 personnel? Find mismatches everywhere. And it sounds like if you believe in a lot of the analysis, I mean, Tyler Warren's kind of a do-everything type of player. You don't have to take him off the field much. It's not like you're going to tip your hand if you have him and Cole Kmet on the field at the same time. Like, well, they're going to throw the ball here, or this is situational football. Like, no, you can leave him on the field because he's gritty, he's grimy, he can put his hand down on the ground right next to the tackle, and he can do some blocking. He can do some digging out of some players. And so you really have kind of a do-it-all 3-down player. And, you look at the rest of the division, you're like, man, this is going to be a matchup nightmare. How are you going to guard against all these guys? And then, what they think is going to be a quarterback that's much, much improved.
What do you think of the Bears tackles? Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. They took one of them deep draft, the other they took high in the draft. Because there will be some primo offensive tackles
for sure
available around there. So, this is, again, with Ben Johnson as the coach, with what he had, okay, we have Montgomery and Gibbs. That worked. He drafted Laporta. That worked.
Yep.
But that's behind Decker over to Penei Sewell with Chanhasen's Frank Ragnow in the middle.
Right.
So that absolutely could be the key to the start of the equation, especially with the depth of the running backs in this draft and them having 39 and 41. So maybe offensive tackle, right?
I mean, offensive tackle would make sense too. I mean, I don't claim to know everything about the Bears' situation offensively on their offensive line. I mean, they may like their guys, but
brought in a couple of free agents.
If it's one of those things where you like them, don't love them.
Yeah.
And if that's where they feel, then you could have your chance at Kelvin Banks, who's like a true left tackle. Membu from Missouri, he plays at right tackle. So you're going to have a choice. We all think that Will Campbell is going to be gone. I mean, he's going to probably go to the Patriots. So if you have the choice between those two, you find yourself a starting left tackle or a starting right tackle exclusively. Now, some teams have them both of them as potential offensive guards. So if that's an area where they're like, well, we have these two really good high-end offensive tackles that have position flexibility. Banks is a little bit taller at 6'5". Membu's a little shorter at 6'4", maybe more of a natural prototype guard look. Then that maybe is the route that they're going as well. You know, so if you are one of those tackles on the Bears team and you see the team draft an offensive tackle, just, you know, emotionally maybe pump the brakes a little bit because they can slide inside.
Now, they didn't get 2 offensive linemen via free agency. They traded for a couple of offensive linemen. And so he did that before free agency even opened. Now, with the Vikings at 24, and do you have a final call for 24? You know, like what you want, what you think, all that.
No, I mean, final call is a smattering of different options because that's just what it is at 24. If you're out there and you say you claim to know for sure, you know, who absolutely is that we're going to pick, then I'd love for you to come over and just like pick all my lottery numbers because it could be a bunch of different guys. Now, it's not going to be 20 different guys. I mean, I think it's probably more like 5 or 6. And offensive line, I think, being the most important. And there's going to be some defensive linemen in there. I've always said I'd prefer, you know, a really, really talented pass rushing defensive tackle over most cornerbacks. I mean, give me the best cornerback in the draft. If you think it's, well, I'll take Travis Hunter out of it. I'll take Travis Hunter out of the equation because we know he's not even an option. But if it's like Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron, I would rather have the defensive tackle. In this draft, maybe the 3rd or 4th best defensive tackle than maybe one of those corners. And but if there is a run on defensive tackle and there's a run on offensive lineman, then you are going to really have some talented secondary players available. So it is going to be offensive line, defensive line, corner safety, you know, situation. You know, those can be sort of a slash because if you have a much higher rated safety than a corner, then it makes sense to take the safety.
In your second year here, 2007, when they drafted Adrian Peterson, do you remember what you thought?
Not too much. I mean, I knew that he was super physical and, you know, you're kind of reading all this stuff and hearing all this stuff like, well, he's got injury concerns. He's red flagged because of injury in his collarbone and all that stuff. At that time, I didn't put that much stock into the draft. I didn't think too much about it. So I was like hearing all the cursory stuff that's just kind of floating around the ether. So I didn't really pay that much attention.
All right, let's go to 2009, your 4th year here. So they draft Percy Harvin from Florida, 22nd overall. And he goes through rookie camp and, you know, you're doing organized team activities and everything. Then you get together at Winter Park for mandatory minicamp and you get a load of this Florida rookie. I mean, I was so enthralled by him on kick returns during that mandatory minicamp. I called Barrero and I said to the producer, if you got a spot, I need to come on right now and tell you what I'm seeing. I mean, this is the NFL Rookie of the Year. I've never seen anything like this in my life. But you played against it through training camp and everything. What do you remember about Percy?
I'll be real honest with you. I thought he was a really talented player physically. I think he shined more when we put the pads on. There's a lot there are a lot of guys. I think you become a little bit immune when you're in it for a while. That these guys come out and if you didn't know anything about these players and you didn't know where they're drafted, they were, as Mike Tomlin would say, nameless gray faces, and you saw them all in shorts and helmets during OTAs, you would mistake a 6-rounder's athleticism for a 1st-rounder because they all look freaking special,
right?
You know, they all look like specimens. They all have, you know, they're quick, they're twitchy, they look all these things. You know, they all look the part. And Percy was kind of the same thing for me. He was smooth. He was a smooth accelerator. You could tell he had the quickness, but he wasn't overly twitched up to where you're like, oh my gosh, like this guy, I mean, his body moves are herky-jerky. It wasn't like that. It was just smooth. And then you put the pads on, and then you see his physicality. Because before you're like, well, he's nicely built, but he's not impressive. And, whereas Adrian was like, oh my God. Look at the granite that was chiseled to make this human specimen.
And he's fast.
And he's fast, right? But Percy wasn't really like that. He wasn't physically imposing. Yeah. So I think for me, Percy really, really shined when you put the pads on and you realize nobody could tackle him. You couldn't catch him because he was quick enough. He was fast enough. His acceleration was deceptively fast. And then the way that he was able to bend his body down and create these points of contact that protected his legs, and he would just bounce off people. You're like, this guy's unbelievable, like, okay, and then you just sort of like, okay, well, we're in practice and maybe it's a little different because we're not going, it's kind of live, but not really live. And then we get to the preseason games and we're like, this guy is as unbelievable of a player, offensive player as I've ever seen. And he totally lived up to that.
Mm-hmm. Now that you've been looking at all of these players and trying to lay things out in the path to 24 and for the draft show and all the conversation taking place tonight, who are maybe one or two players? And then, I know Travis Hunter is going to be in that mix, certainly, maybe Abdul Carter, but some guys that kind of offer you now as an analyst that same type of Adrian Peterson, are you bleeping kidding me with this Greek god that just happens to play football?
Well, you and I were just talking, and I'm so glad you brought him up. One guy that I cannot get out of my head that he's not going to be there at 24.
No, he's not.
He's too good.
But I love him.
But you and I are both.
You're super excited right now.
We're both in love with Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
And there's a pop that he plays with his hips that I think none of these other guys, Mason Graham certainly doesn't have that. He's just more of a kind of a bulldozing, he's a very talented guy, but he's not like Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan's 6'4", he's under 300 pounds. He's a leaner interior defensive lineman. He can play a lot of different positions. Like, I love his position flexibility in a B-flow scheme. The way that he can bend his body with balance and strength, none of these other guys have. There's a tenacity in the way that he moves that none of these other guys have. You look at Kenneth Grant as an interior defensive lineman from Michigan. He's a big-bodied guy. Can he make plays? Absolutely. Is he impressively quick and fast for being almost 340 pounds? Yes. Same thing for Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon transferred from Michigan State to Oregon. He's around 315 on a 6'5" frame. I like him for other reasons because he's much taller. He uses his length so much better, but he doesn't move like Walter Nolan. I would leap at a chance to get Walter Nolan. And even if Gray Zabel is there, even if Tyler Booker is there, I would say you cannot pass on this guy. He's going to make your defensive line so much better. And he would be a day one starter, and I think he'd be a game wrecker.
It's crazy and you broke it down so much more deeply than I will, and I appreciate it. But as I was telling you back here, he's just never not in the backfield. And maybe it's the bending and the hips that you're talking about, but there is this almost intuitive nature to his game where he finds a way and he can contort himself in ways just to get to the freaking finish line. And this isn't just about pressuring and dropping L's on QBs, although ultimately, right, like I always use Tom Johnson as an example. That's the last time we actually had a 3 technique that was finding his way into the backfield with any frequency.
Right.
As crazy as that is. So that was 2017. But with Nolan, not just from a pass rushing standpoint, tackles for loss in general, disrupting the run game, he is absolutely like the, football's version of the 5-tool player, as good as it gets. But the problem is, and we were talking about it last night on a stream with Alec Lewis from The Athletic, there's these massive, I'm sure you've seen this, Ben, these broad spectrums of where players will go. So as you were breaking it down, I'd love O-line, love D-line, corner, safety, kind of that hierarchy for 24. it's really tough to attach solid, stone cold cemented names to it because Nolan could go 11th. Nolan could go 22nd. I think is that the Chargers spot, right? Maybe they want to find somebody to replace Joey Bosa, but if Nolan's available, they might take a guy like that. It's just the broad spectrum of where some of these guys can go makes tonight's draft so fascinating.
Yeah, excuse me, it really does. I think we all agree that the top 5 is locked into a point where it's not going to really affect much of the draft. If Jacksonville doesn't take Genty, it'll shake things up a little bit, but Genty's still going to go top 10. And so I don't think it's going to greatly affect any sort of runs that happen as far as offense and defensive linemen. So, yeah, that's what makes this really compelling. You get outside the 9th pick, and it really is a free-for-all. We don't really know. I mean, we like to think that the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world have a really good finger on the pulse, like literally talking to teams and get a feeling for like, okay, I know on paper we have this position secured, but we got to look to the future and don't put it past us to address this position, even though it doesn't look like a position of need. You filter all of that stuff out, and it still leaves us with a lot of options at 24. It could be a bunch of different guys, and I feel like you and I are on the same page with this, along with a lot of other people, that if everything shakes out the way these mock drafts are shaking out, Gray Zabel seems to be like the shoe-in to be there, and he absolutely fits a need for us at 24.
I think they would take Booker over Zabel if those two were available. But in closing for this segment, that amplifying what you've done with the Minnesota Moving Company, and then and Booker, Zabel, Booker, whomever.
Yeah.
Obviously they have to be good, and obviously they have to fit what you want to do. But wouldn't that truly be the final piece to give J.J. McCarthy absolutely his best chance to succeed?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so you have 3 receivers you like. You brought in Rondell Moore. You got 2 tight ends you like, 2 new offensive linemen, a backup running back for Aaron Jones who complements him beautifully off what Jordan Mason has done. It seems like if you have an opportunity with somebody you like and you're not forcing it to take that position, one of those players, then that solidifies what really still is the identity of the team, the offense.
Well, and let's talk about this too. I know everybody's trying to find the best pieces available at your positions of need and all that stuff. But I don't think that Blake Brandel he's not a bad player.
Right. He needed last year. Are you going to tell me that he's not going to grow as a player from last year to this year? Of course he is. Right.
Especially if you surround him with Darrisaw when he's back healthy. You have a super experienced Ryan Kelly at center. If all things just stay the same tonight, at least in the first round, and we don't address offensive line, it's still a really, really good offense in totality.
Yeah.
So yes, do we think that we're upgrading with Booker or Zabel at left guard? Sure. But they're also going to be rookies.
Yeah.
And, there's always like some rookies that just stumble a little bit, and it takes a few games, half a season, maybe a full season to fully get up to speed and really showcase who they really are. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we have to upgrade at left guard. If it's there and it presents itself, great, we can do that. But I don't look at our offensive line. I don't look at our offense right now as any sort of true weak link. It's just that, you get these shiny new toys in front of you, and you feel like, okay, well, Blake played decent, but maybe not great. What if we get a guy that can play great?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, that would be amazing. But
then Brandel becomes high-end swing backup.
Yes, correct.
Rouse is in his second year. They like him, he hasn't played. You have School, who may start at left tackle to begin the season. So now, you in essence, you got to hit on the guy, but perhaps you fortified the troops. You fortified the entire room by making that move.
Yeah, you absolutely do. That's the thing. I guess I'm just trying to say that when it comes to J.J. McCarthy having the things that he needs, he's got it already.
Right.
You know,
I agree.
He's got it already. I mean, once Darrisaw's healthy, you know, when Darrisaw's back, changes everything. You know, you do have to maybe start looking at right tackle. I mean, do we find a true swing guy that can play tackle and guard for not maybe this year, but maybe next year? Like you do have to cast your gaze a little bit further down the road too with some of these selections. Very much the same thing we're doing with Harrison Smith in the safety position. So, you know, I look at some of the best offensive lines that we look in recent history. You look at the Dallas Cowboys. They had a great offensive line for a stretch of 4 or 5 years. What did they do with it? Not much.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's important and we all want it and I believe it. We got to win in the trenches. But if we walk away from this draft at 24 and we don't address offensive line, that's fine. I think that we can play a high level winning football with the guys that we have right now.
Ben Leber with yours truly, Pete Bursich and Paul Charchian at US Bank Stadium tonight for a Vikings Draft Party radio show. It begins at 7:00. We'll preview that and put a wrap on the draft with Nacho Leber when we return to 9 to noon. But first,
all I can think about is Walter Nolan right now, but we might as well give some cash away. The Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, use the keyword money. You might win $1,000, like winning money by the keyword money on K.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
KFAN. Basically, wall-to-wall draft coverage right here on your home for Vikings football, The Fan. And we're streaming throughout the day. Draft coverage has been brought to you by Heating and Cooling 2. You can just go to heatcool2.com. Thank you so much to Heating and Cooling 2 for bringing you such things. But throughout the day, all of our shows are going to be streaming, I believe, today and tomorrow. So KFAN.com/watch is the spot if you want to see us on video. Free iHeartRadio app. For the listening side of things, talkbacks via the app, always appreciated. Thank you for hanging out with us as we find our way to pick number 24 in tonight's NFL Draft, a show that'll begin at 7 p.m.
9 to noon.
Courtney Cronin, ESPN, ESPN.com, about 15 minutes from now. Final segment with Ben Leber. Don't forget to watch Ben on TV today, 3 to 4:30, Channel 5. It is Twin Cities Live, TCL. Yeah, you know we. Then you'll hear us this evening at US Bank Stadium. Can't wait to see everybody for the Vikings Draft Party. The radio show is from 7 until 10. We're expecting to chat with the likes of Jared Allen, maybe Adrian Peterson, running back Aaron Jones, Blake Cashman, and others. What did Aaron Jones? What did you think of Aaron Jones' season last year overall?
You know, I thought it was really good. I mean, I think when you look back on it and don't look at it from a week to week standpoint, because you did see him just sort of, you know, he's battling through some stuff. You could tell. I don't know what week it was, but you could just tell that like there was something bothering him at times, and he just keep re-injuring and getting banged up But when you look at the totality of the season, it was awesome. I mean, it's kind of what we needed. And yeah, would you like a little bit more of a home run ability at the top end speed? Sure. But I think in this offense, all you really, really need is just somebody that poses a threat to pick up first downs. Yep. And I don't necessarily think you have to have these home run hitters anymore, especially when you're 60% passing the football anyway. You need a good pass catcher, and he continues to shine blocking on third down. I mean, how many times did both Pete and I were just like, whoa, like,
yeah.
Did you see that, the A-gap blitz pickup by Aaron Jones? Like, that was ridiculous. Like, we were, from a football standpoint, you look at those little things, like those things really, really matter to keep your body on the field for 3 downs. And what a great leader that he is for all the young guys. And so I think having Mason here now and having a true number 2 running back that you can really, really rely on, I think both of them are going to have really big years.
I'm sorry.
And how do you expect them to split reps? I mean, we have a lot of time to watch this and think about it, but Jones and Mason, like with Jordan Mason here, I don't see Aaron playing 80% of the game, Jordan 20. No. But what do you anticipate?
I'd be fine if they went 50-50. I don't think Aaron, I'm putting words in his mouth here, but I don't get the feeling that he has to prove to the league that he has to be on the field 80% of the time and getting a bulk of the reps. I think that he understands where he's at in his physical career and that he's best when he's got more fresh legs and takes some less hits. So you're going to get a longer career from him, which financially is going to be more beneficial if he does play a little bit more 50-50. And he feels like he's got somebody that's just as competent going out there because he's all about the team. I mean, if he feels like he's going to take a break, a series or 2 or 3 here and there, then he knows that, there's not a big drop off offensively by having Jordan out there. So, I don't think that he's pounding his chest and, being stubborn about getting a ton of reps. 50-50 is good with me.
That was the route I was going. I felt the return on investment with Jones's reps did kind of tail down at the back end of the season. So keeping him fresh is an A topic for me. But in terms of the running back situation, how drastically, and think about J.J. McCarthy now, heading this operation, how drastically does the offense as we know it through 3 seasons of Kevin O'Connell change? Or does it not drastically change at all, given Jordan Mason here and maybe some different skill sets that McCarthy might have?
I think that I could see us changing in a way where offensively we see a little bit more of a pull scheme. I could see us dabbling with a little bit more of power football. Some of the play actions kind of marry up to what Michigan was doing, and you really get JJ comfortable, kind of doing the same sort of play action footwork. And I think he's athletic enough to do what KOC's always been doing. But you see sort of this evolution of offensive line where I think that we're actually going to be on the move a little bit more. I think that even if we run some zone scheme, it's going to be a wider zone scheme to where we really get those elephants on parade out in front, and we have a more athletic quarterback in McCarthy that he could take, sort of this circuitous sort of play fake all the way around and cover a lot of ground and do it still in time. So I think the offense is going to look a little more athletic, and in doing so, I think you're going to see some offensive linemen more on the move.
We were talking about it with Charch in the open. And Charch had mentioned Ibuka, this wide receiver out of Ohio State that he absolutely loves, and for good reason. But just kind of the idea of
there's no chance.
I don't think there is either.
I didn't want to ruin his penultimate 9 to noon day. But no, they're not taking receiver at 24.
Well, and then that was my touchdown call, because I'd be curious if there was a position or situation that would absolutely shock you. We've set this up now where it is O-line, it is D-line, it's corner, it's safety. Is there anything that happens at 24 tonight where your jaw would be on the floor at US Bank Stadium?
Well, I think receiver would be one of them.
Yeah.
For sure. Just because, the exact reaction that PA gave you is kind of how I'd feel. Like, I don't know what we're doing here. We have too many other areas of need. Why are we going here? I actually think that inside linebacker would be a shock to me. An edge rusher, even though we have 2 Pro Bowl edge rushers, necessarily wouldn't be a shock to me. And we hope that Dallas Turner is going to be way better than in year 2 than he is in year 1. But we just know that getting to the quarterback is a premium in this league. So
that's interesting.
It wouldn't shock me. I don't put that as a high likelihood. I think inside linebacker, you talk about Jalen Walker, Jahad Campbell, and then this Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, who's most likely going to be in there in that 24 range. If they took Carson out of UCLA, who's a very talented football, maybe the most instinctful inside linebacker of the 3.
Wow.
I think that would be a shock.
You know what's interesting about what you just said, and I haven't really thought it out, but it's clear with Grenard and Van Ginkel, you can do things at a very, very, very high level against the run and against the pass. Now, Turner is still a wild card until he's not a wild card. Correct?
Correct.
First round pick or not, he's a wild. There needs to be improvement and dramatic shown until we see it. I look at it from a wild card standpoint. And then Patrick Jones goes to Carolina. Mm-hmm. Patrick was serviceable. Patrick was good at times, but serviceable all the time. And now undrafted Gabe Murphy, he got some opportunity last year, and from training camp and all, they love him. But still, he hasn't played a lot. So that's 4 right there, and they generally all play. So you got a couple of wild cards at 3 and 4 behind the obvious 2. I think that elevates. If there's an edge that you love, I'd be surprised if they did it. But if you look at it from that standpoint, through that lens, it makes a little more sense than I originally thought this morning.
If you look at the guys potentially available in that 24 area, if I'm probably going to butcher his name, Ezaraku, the pass rusher out of Boston, the pass rusher out of Boston College, dude, he led the nation in sacks this year, and he's potentially a mid to late round. First round draft pick, which is kind of crazy to think.
I think and sorry to clip, but I think he goes right in front of us.
He could.
Yeah, like Chargers 22, maybe.
Well, his coach at Boston College is Green Bay's defensive coordinator.
Correct.
Oh, Hafley, yeah.
Hafley. And from what I understand, Hafley loves the guy. He brought him there.
He should.
Right. And somebody to bookend Rashawn Gary or work with him. That I would bet that Boston College cat goes 23.
Well, then James Pierce is there from Tennessee.
Okay,
if that's the case, and that's the way it's going to go, because we're guessing Shamar Stewart from A&M probably goes before that as well. So my point is, there is going to be a talented pass rusher that you could convince me. Again, I put this at like the 5% that we go true edge rusher.
Yep,
but if a guy like James Pierce, who's 6'5", 243, you're like, all right, well, he's just a nickel dime guy. He's not a run stopper. If we take out some of the beef that we have, and we have Dallas and him, and we've got, already our 2 outside rushers, and, we get Gabe Murphy involved, and Gabe's actually he's a thick guy.
Yeah,
he's
not tall, but thick.
He's probably in that 265, 270 range. Okay. I'm like, you got this complete jet package that's coming in on third down. You're like, all right, I can live with that. Right. I think that'd be kind of fun to watch.
Ben Leber, half of your quadruple header today is complete. Power Trip Morning Show, 9 to noon, and now you rest. Twin Cities Live, 3 to 4:30, Channel 5. Right. Draft Party, KFAN, 7 o'clock at the stadium.
Can't wait, man.
Yeah,
it's a fun day.
Blessed day for you, man, and it's very fun. Thank you.
Yeah, see ya.
Ben Leber, courtesy of Maple Grove Lock and Safe. Maple Grove Lock and Safe, thank you very much. Courtney Cronin from ESPN helps us with the Bears part of the draft and much more when 9 to noon continues.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.
On KFAN.
NFL Draft.
Courtney Cronin at Courtney R. Cronin writes about the NFL and covers the Chicago Bears for ESPN and ESPN.com. We see her on television a lot, here on the radio, and we read her stories. And before we get into the NFL draft, Bears immortality Steve McMichael, Courtney, has died after a battle with ALS. How hard does that hit Bears fans, young and old?
I think young, old people who got to watch him play, people who didn't, all feel the same about it. I mean, he became a symbol within this franchise for a long time. And it was like when he was playing and then after he was playing, that 85 team was so prevalent in the community, PA. Like, they were around everywhere. And he was a big part of that. I remember the first time my dad took us down to Bourbonnais, which is where they used to do training camp at Olivet Nazarene. We were at some hole-in-the-wall pizza place. Like, we were hungry. We had to get something to eat. It's probably 2003. Maybe I was a kid. And my dad's like, that's Steve McMichael. That's Mongo, Ming, the Ming Dynasty, the whole thing with him. And he was like, we were like, should we go up and say hi? Like, I had no idea who he was as a kid, but we went up and got a chance to meet him, and he was a caricature of himself, nicest guy in the world, stopped to take pictures with my brother and I, and that was my introduction to him. And I know so many people around here have stories like that, some wild stories of their time with McMichael, and obviously his legacy extends beyond the National Football League and the teams that he played with. I mean, he was a big part of wrestling and that community, and I know that Ric Flair had a pretty emotional tweet that he put out yesterday about losing his best friend. It's just amazing how many corners of the sportsverse he touched throughout his 67 years here on Earth.
And Courtney has quite the touching story on this at ESPN.com underneath the Chicago Bears after you go to NFL. And may God rest the soul of Bears immortality, Steve McMichael. Now, are you attending the draft in Green Bay? And the reason I ask is before the McMichael story, your last byline was Lake Forest, Illinois. So do you do it from Illinois or do you do it from Green Bay?
No, we do it from the team facility. I just think it when you don't, even last year when they had the number 1 overall pick and they had number 9, it makes more sense to be at the facility because the general manager talks, the head coach talks. And a couple of years ago, when Darnell Wright was drafted, I think that was when the draft was in Kansas City. He wasn't even there. So, I mean, you do run the risk of the prospect you're drafting, your team drafts not being there. So for me, I will be hunkered down at Hallis Hall for the next 3 days.
So the Bears 10, 39, 41, and 72. That's just 39 and 41 together like that. That's there's so much you can do with that. But would you guess they most likely stay at 10? What do you think?
Well, there's some buzz around them right now being in love with Ashton Genty, and you can understand why. The guy is a tremendous playmaker, not just for his contributions as a running back and being a Heisman Trophy finalist. I think Ben Johnson eyes, a similar usage for him that they had with Jahmyr Gibbs and using him as an option in the passing game. And if you can upgrade your backfield, what's the sweet spot to trade up? Because it does not at all feel like he's going to be there at 10. Like, we hear about Jacksonville being interested, of course, Las Vegas Raiders, and giving Pete Carroll his new version of Marshawn Lynch. If they trade up, I think you've got to be disciplined with not going up too far. But if they want him, it feels like they've got to get in front of Jacksonville at 5. So trading up with the Patriots, I think that's too much. But I know that there's a lot of buzz about him, about the left tackle of the future potentially, maybe even an edge rusher at that position. And then, of course, the guy that I took in our NFL Nation mock draft was Tyler Warren. So they could go a lot of different ways tonight, which is why they're the wild card of this draft, because there's not one clear-cut need considering what they did in free agency. But knowing that you paid Ben Johnson $13 million, he's very clearly going to have a say in personnel, certainly more than Matt Eberflus did. How much say is he going to have in getting his offensive guys in year one to be able to do what he wants to get this offense on track? So
who gets final say on the picks? The new head coach or general manager Ryan Poles?
It'll still be Ryan Poles from my understanding, but I do think that Ben Johnson and how much, he was the hottest coaching candidate this cycle. He's going to have quite a bit of say in the direction that they're going. And, for all intents and purposes, they say they're all on the same page at the way that they stack the board, because they had obviously been doing draft prep long before they hired him as a head coach, long before they hired the coordinators, and they claim that they're all pretty aligned. I'll be very curious to see if that alignment comes out in the form of there's a surefire guy that they all have to get and they feel comfortable moving up to get somebody, or whether that person falls to them at 10. I don't see a scenario realistically right now because of the quarterbacks where they're able to trade out of 10. But if it goes, if it goes the way that I think Ben Johnson's hoping, they get either Tyler Warren or Ashton Genty or the left tackle of the future, and somebody that you can build around, not necessarily have the guy have to play in year one, but have him in the system, get ready to go. So year two, you're not starting a rookie, you're starting somebody who has been in your system for a while, because Braxton Jones is a free agent. He's coming off an injury, which, is going to take some time. He's not going to be full go at the start of training camp, but you do have the option to get somebody in at left tackle to create competition at a spot that needs it. And then think about next year and the long-term effect of potentially having a franchise player.
CC, any early tells on the dynamics of that relationship, new head coach and Poles?
It's interesting because obviously he and Matt Eberflus came in at the same time, and there was always kind of this awkward nature from Eberflus whenever he got to the podium, whenever he spoke publicly. Ben Johnson's the antithesis of that. Like, he's so confident, he's so unabashed in who he is, and even the other day, so he throws out the first pitch at the Cubs game, and he throws heat. Throws a sinker, you could tell he was practicing it, and Ryan Poles gets to the podium the other day and immediately starts kind of ribbing his head coach. He's like, look, I'm glad he came with some movement. I thought he was just going to come with speed. It's nice to see that he was, taking this thing seriously. And I think that's, they're similar. They're close in age. This is Poles' first real head coaching pick. I mean, he was hired 2 days before Matt Eberflus was hired. He was not really a part of the process of hiring and interviewing the head coach the last time. So, I mean, this was his guy. And remember all those rumors that came out before the hire was made about Ben Johnson wanting to go somewhere where he was going to be able to pick his GM? Clearly being in a place where the GM was already here and feeling like you could be aligned with him shows that, they think it's going to be the right fit. And we'll see when they come away from the draft and just how that process goes and what the behind the scenes looks and feels like, if that's really the marriage that they thought it would be.
They and outside of the draft, the Bears just gave corner Kyler Gordon a big deal. What? We hear a lot about Jalen Johnson, but what's good with Kyler Gordon's game? I
mean, he's an athletic freak first and foremost. He was the first draft pick for Ryan Poles, so you got to feel good if you're the general manager. It's a draft day success for you in 2022 to have this guy become. We know how much the nickel position is played in the NFL. It's a starting defensive back. And to get him the contract that makes him the highest paid defensive player, highest paid at his position, one of the highest paid on the team, too, I think it speaks volumes to just how to view his usage. And that's saying something because none of these coaches have worked with him yet. And I remember Dennis Allen, one of the first things he said when we had a chance to talk with him in January, right after he was hired, was how much he was eager to work with Kyler Gordon because, you're a traffic cop in that position and he can do so much. He can, play up in the box if you want him to. They're going to start trying to get him some reps safety is what Dennis Allen said. He told him right after he got the contract, all right, go to second position, learn outside corner, learn safety. And we've seen him play outside corner before, especially the early years of his career here. But he's versatile, man. He can play a lot of different spots in that secondary, and they're not going to be the soft coverage zone anymore that they were under Matt Eberflus. They're an attacking defense, and the back end's going to have to cover better than they have before, and he's a big part of that.
All right.
Time for two more.
Why, outside of the covenant for a second, Courtney Cronin, ESPN, ESPN.com, at Courtney R. Cronin via the X Machine. Why do you think Keenan Allen hasn't landed with the team? Like outside of his big games against the Vikings last year, Keenan Allen, what do you see in him?
Well, he's 32, and he's got not like a degenerative foot condition, but it was the plantar fasciitis that slowed him down early on, and I think he lost some speed with that. He's a veteran receiver. I imagine he probably doesn't want to show up for OTAs, and I can't blame him for that. Well, there's some other guys that are still out there too that are in that, other side of 30 range that I would imagine, if he wants to stay in LA, it was hard for him last year coming here because he had spent the first 10 years of his career with the San Diego and then Los Angeles Chargers. And he did this whole year by himself, no family. I think, for him, it was taking time this offseason to figure out, do I want to keep playing? Which the answer is yes. For every conversation I've had with Keenan, it's that he wants to continue playing. And at the end of the year, he felt he was auditioning for 31 other teams. But I think it's going to come down to the timing of when he signs. I think he's got 1 or 2 more years left in him. And then beyond that, can he finish out his career in the place where it started? I think that would mean a lot to him. Coming to, slight discount. Remember, he was getting like $23.1 million last year because it was the final year of his deal when the Bears traded for him. Naturally, he's not going to get a deal of that size, but I do think for a hometown discount, if he could make that work for the Chargers, that they'd be willing to sign up for that.
Lastly, and thank you very much for the time. From what you know now, Courtney, what are some things Johnson and the gang can do to get Caleb Williams to improve?
How about play action? Does that work for you? Like, we saw none of it last year. All the under center stuff that Ben Johnson's been talking about. Caleb needs to, he's going to be an under center quarterback because he's primarily been a shotgun quarterback his whole life. That's what helped Jared Goff. You roll the quarterback away from pressure. You use the bootlegs to get him on the move and create some advantageous situations offensively for him to, not constantly be under pressure. I think the offensive line being flipped in one offseason certainly helped, but he's, they brought him here for Caleb, and now everything they've done in the offseason, it kind of feels like the Bears will soon push their chips to the table and say, okay, Caleb, it's on you. It's on you now to make it work, considering everything they did to prioritize his development, his further growth, and thinking that he, can be a franchise quarterback. They've got to know the answer to that after this season, though. So often we don't see quarterbacks really get to year 3, especially first rounders. If you don't know, then you're kind of in if you don't know, you do know. They've got to have an answer on him by the end of this year. And I think that they believe the situation that they're in now with a new coaching staff and a lot of new players around him, that they'll be able to do that.
That was awesome. Have a wonderful day. We'll follow you from afar and talk soon. Okay, Courtney?
Take care. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yep, appreciate you. Courtney Cronin at Courtney R. Cronin.
CC.
Covers the Bears for ESPN and ESPN.com. Some more adversarial updates are around the corner. Dan Miller, our friend with the Detroit Lions, joins 9 to noon.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care.